Welcome to Filmability. My name is Joel Fisher and I'm the author of Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema, which you can find on Amazon and Kindle paperback. Welcome if this is your first time listening, and welcome back if you've listened before. Remember, you can find me wherever you get your podcasts, so don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment and all that good stuff. This week I'm watching The Other Side of the Mountain, the biopic of Jill Kinmont, a potential Olympic skier who became paralysed from the neck down in an accident. The Other Side of the Mountain is directed by Larry Pierce, that's Pierce with two E's. A director best known for films such as One Potato, Two Potato with Barbara Barrie and Bernie Hamilton, The Incident with Martin Sheen and Beau Bridges, and Goodbye Columbus. The screenplay for The Other Side of the Mountain was written by David Seltzer, a writer who went on to write screenplays for such films as The Omen with Gregory Peck and Lee Remick, Bird on the Wire with Mel Gibson and Goldie Hawn, and Shining Through with Michael Douglas and Melanie Griffith. The film is also based on a book about Jill Kinmont's life called A Long Way Up by E.G. Vallance. As usual, I would say that you would need to watch The Other Side of the Mountain before continuing with the podcast because I will be spoiling everything. However, The Other Side of the Mountain is not available to stream for free, but you can find it by renting it or buying it digitally or in physical form. So without further ado, let's get on with the film. Okay, so the film starts out with a shot at the bottom of a mountain. The text says, "This is a true story." A woman wakes up in her bed and her voiceover says that it's hard to get up and it's hard to think about who she was before. This woman's name is Jill Kinmont and she's played by a man in Hazit. There are kids getting dressed for school, all arguing, making noise, and then somebody comes in to Jill and it looks like they're going to help her out of bed. And there's a scene at a school, and it turns out that Jill is a teacher and she's a wheelchair user. Outside she's with the kids and she's explaining that her mother gets her out of bed every morning and that she has to use a catheter, which is a bit too much information, but education I suppose helps. She then talks to the kids about spelling and they all join in enthusiastically. The kids settle down, and one of the kids thinks that nobody would ever marry Jill, and another kid says that they would because she's beautiful, and asks if she was ever asked to get married. She says yes, and that he doesn't know who the person is that she's going to talk about. And her voiceover talks about how she still thinks about her life before her accident. And this is the kind of thing we've seen time and time again. The clumsy foreshadowing of what's to come in a film where somebody's life changes forever. Those who may not know who Jill Kinmont was before watching the film may be surprised, but not for very long. There's also the emphasis on a person's life before they became disabled, which is often focused to an almost unrealistic degree. Yes, disability can change a person's life, but all too often the media portrays disability as being something dreadful that cuts somebody down in the prime of their life, as if their physicality was the best thing they had going for them. Luckily, as the film shows, there are still things you can do even when you think your life may be over. It then cuts to her skiing down a mountain. She says, "I'm Jill Kinmont, I'm a skier," as you would do if you're on a mountain skiing. And we see her skiing down the mountain as the credits play over it. Cuts to a locker room, where Jill and her friend are talking about a man in a magazine and how handsome he is. Her friend's name is Audrey Joe, and she's played by Belinda Montgomery. Another woman comes over and sees the picture and she says that she's got plenty of options for men. And then their coach comes in and he says he's decided to take them all out today because the whole team need to do training. The coach's name is Dave McCoy and he's played by Dabney Coleman. In the car, Jill and their friends are messing around in the back as they get to the slopes. They get out their gear from the car and they go up the mountain. And Jill's voiceover says that all she's ever wanted to do was ski, and she talks about Dave. She talks about the competition and their biggest rival, and a man skis down and sprays snow on the spectators. Jill then talks about how it was a big rivalry to show which team was best. Audra goes down the slope, followed by Jill, and as Jill gets ready, they cheer for her, and she crashes out, unfortunately, not finishing the course. And the man who she saw in the picture offers to help her up and makes fun of her. He starts to tell her about how she should be properly skiing down the slope. I mean, a bit of mansplaining. But she doesn't recognise him at first because he's wearing these big goggles that cover his eyes, and she's surprised when he takes them off. This man is named Dick Biopic, and he's played by Bridges. Jill then skis down the course successfully and waves to Dick. In her voiceover, she talks about meeting Dick and how at home everybody did their share of the chores. She talks about Audra too, showing them driving into town and racing down the mountain and crashing into each other and laughing. They're good friends and they're having a good time. In bed, they're both laying there, and Jill asks why she's been so lucky, asking if Audra ever feels that way. She says she thinks she was born lucky and using all her luck at once. But Audra then says that she's feeling sick and she has a headache. Jill says that she thinks she's got too much sun and offers her an aspirin, but Audra then passes out and Jill panics, getting her other teammates to call the doctor. At the hospital, they ask Dave what's wrong, and he says that the doctor thinks that Audra has contracted polio. One of the team members gives the coach a ring and tells him to give it to Audra and tell her that he loves her. Jill then goes to Audra as she watches her getting loaded into an ambulance. Jill then sits with Audra as she's in an iron lung. And yes, this may seem shocking to us now, but since the vaccine for polio wasn't as widespread in the mid-50s, patients often had to use what they called an iron lung. An iron lung was a type of negative pressure ventilator, a mechanical respirator which varies the air pressure in the enclosed space of the casing to stimulate breathing. It was used for polio patients who had lost the use of their respiratory muscles because polio can destroy the motor neurons in the spinal cord and brainstem, causing the loss of voluntary muscle movements. Patients were unable to pull air into their lungs, so iron lungs were used to help them. However, the amount of time that a person with polio had to use an iron lung did vary. It could be weeks, months, or even for the rest of their lives. And I will talk about the progression of treatment for people with polio a little bit later. And then later on we see Jill working out outside. Then in the next scene, a friend and Jill are riding their bikes along an empty road, and they see a plane in the middle of the road, and they start speculating who it belongs to. They knock on the door and talk about going to school and asking when practice is. They talk about Dick, and he's inside the house as Dave opens it, while Dick soon appears, and he's on crutches. Dave then tells them not to be late for school, and Dick asks if Jill wants to go for a walk, and they go outside. Cut to a plane flying in the sky, and a couple watch them. It's Jill's parents, and she thinks that Jill and Dick are both in the plane, as they are, because this is Dick's plane. Jill's mother is called June, and she's played by Nan Martin, and her father is called Bill, and he's played by William Bryant. Cut to outside, Dick and Jill are walking across a log across a river, and Dick nearly falls in. She asks him if he wants to die, and he says he doesn't really think about anything like that. He says he just keeps going and doesn't let anything get in his way. She says she cares about him, and he says that he thinks that she's beautiful, and she says the same about him. She just says that she wants him to stay alive, and the plane takes off as Jill watches. Cut back to the ski slope, and a woman races down the slope, doing the slalom. Jill then follows, and her voiceover talks about the competition and her determination to win. She wins, and everybody celebrates. She says people want to be with her teammate, Buddy Werner, but her mind was still on Dick. I'm taking my dad to the gutter. I can hear you giggling. At the ski lodge, Dick comes in with another woman in his arms, and somebody says that he's engaged to her, and he comes over to introduce her to Jill. And Jill then goes outside and cries, and is consoled by Buddy, and she hugs him and cries. Buddy is played by Bill Vint. Out on a ski slope, the skiers are racing down the slalom, and it's Jill's turn. Her voiceover says she was invited to a special training camp, and if she did well, then she could even go to the Olympics. Her and Buddy race down the slope, crashing into each other and falling into each other, and then there's a montage of them spending time with each other, playing around, messing around, and kissing. They're met by reporters as they go to their car, and the reporters are asking them questions. They cuts to a passenger plane as they land, and they're met with more reporters and Dave. On the slope, Dave talks her through what to do on the way down and makes sure that she'll be safe. She then gets to the top and starts, and her voiceover talks about her biggest opponent and how she can beat her. Buddy then comes to see her and wishes her luck, and she says the same back to him. He gives her St. Christopher for luck, and she says that she needs to go. He then tells her he loves her, and she responds in kind, and he reminds her of their date that they're having later. And I mean, this whole setup, it sounds like something bad might happen, and this is the way that the film is going to go. On the slope, everybody's having a good time, and various skiers are shown coming down. Some more successful than others. The commentator announces Jill and her opponent, with her opponent going first. Then it's Jill's turn, and Dave gives her a pep talk. He counts her down, and she starts racing down the hill, but hits a flag, and there's a slow-mo shot of her falling, and she falls down the sharp cliff edge and lands on the snow below. The announcer tells people to clear the course as the paramedics come down and check on her. They ask where it hurts, and she says that she can't feel anything. They lift her onto a stretcher and secure her in tightly so as they carry her back up the mountain. She gets loaded into an ambulance, and it's all very dramatic, and the crowd is watching her as they drive away, and the crowd even tries to follow the ambulance. In the ambulance, her teammate thinks that she's going to die, and Jill agrees. But Dave gets him by the scruff of his neck and tells him that she's Jill Kinmont and she's not going to die. At a hospital, Jill's on a bed with many contraptions and wires around her and a big red tube up her nose. She feels a pain in her head, and Buddy's there to distract her and make her feel better, telling her that she'll be okay. The nurse reassures her that everything will be alright. Jill just wants Buddy to stay. The doctor in the next scene says that her neck and spinal cord are broken. Jill's mother, June, asks what the prognosis was, and the doctor says that they have to wait and see how Jill responds, but the doctor says that there's hope. June interprets this as that there'll be hope that she can walk, and the doctor corrects her, saying there's hope that she'll live. And her mother looks very distraught, as if not being able to walk is the same thing as dying. And here we go again with the old train of thought. The idea that a person is better off dead than disabled is something that I'm sure a lot of non-disabled people wouldn't think of consciously, but it's so often something that comes across. When a non-disabled person comes up to a disabled person and says, I couldn't do what you're doing, even though they're just using a wheelchair, walking with crutches, or even using a white stick and a guide dog. It's meant in a nice and uplifting way, as if the disabled person is doing something especially different just because they're disabled. But the problem with that is that it often makes the disabled person feel bad because, as far as they're concerned, they're merely existing, and somebody's just told them that they couldn't exist if they were them, which means that they would rather be dead than disabled. So think carefully when you talk to a disabled person. Their life is not there for you to admire. They're just going about their day like everybody else. And if you don't think you could live with being disabled, then I hope you never have to find out exactly how you would cope. Jill then gets prepared by the hospital staff, and they turn her over onto her back, although she's now strapped to the bed, so she's hanging upside down, practically. She then sees a pair of feet, and the doctor introduces himself. She says there's blood on his shoe, and it better not be hers, and he laughs. June and Jill's dad, Bill, come in, and they lie on the floor so they can look up and talk to her. In bed later, Jill's eyes are being checked, and she's upright this time. She's lying on her back. She's laying there and she thinks that'll be bad because the doctor is smiling, and she's always been told to be aware of smiling doctors. He says there's no movement and she's lucky she isn't using a lone lung. She asks how long it will be before she's well again, and the doctor says that she doesn't understand the situation. She tells him that he doesn't understand. She told everybody that she'll walk again, and if he tells them differently, then she'll look very silly. And Dave comes in later and asks Jill how she's feeling, asking if she needs anything. Jill then talks about another skier, and he gets a little teary looking at the pictures on the wall. She reassures him that everything's going to be okay, and he says he'll see her soon, and he leaves. June is then reading Jill a letter from Buddy saying how he's going to come see her, and when he does, that she'll be able to walk into his arms. Audra then comes in, and she's on crutches. Jill is overjoyed to see her, and June leaves them together. And this may be something of a surprise for the audience, because as I said earlier, polio patients would have to have used an iron lung because of the muscles not responding properly. However, the treatment for polio patients in the 1950s dramatically improved. Firstly, there was an end to ending plaster immobilisation, where rigid body casts were used, and this was stopped after doctors realised that it caused muscular atrophy. Sister Elizabeth Kenny also developed a hydrotherapy treatment which significantly helped people with polio and even got them to walk again, using hot, moist compresses to relieve the agonising muscle spasms. Also, physiotherapy was applied early on in treatment of polio patients, including massages and exercises, which maximised the strength and flexibility of the limbs and the uninjured nerve cells. Also, during an epidemic in Copenhagen in 1952, Danish physicians used tracheostomies paired with positive pressure ventilation, blowing air into the lungs instead of pulling the chest open from the outside, which an iron lung would do. Ventilators also got smaller, enabling medical staff to gain access to patients, which vastly improved their hygiene, comfort, and most importantly, their survival rates. ICUs, or intensive care units, were also created, putting people with the same conditions in the same place. Treatment also focused on treating the whole patient and not just the polio virus, which otherwise would have written them off, which means that they not only got physical treatment, but they also got psychological treatment as well. Also in 1955, a vaccine was finally approved and declared safe and effective, leading to mass immunisation campaigns which rapidly cut down infection rates. Audra then says that she got there with help from her therapist, who she says that she thinks is cute. She offers Jill some popcorn, but Jill doesn't want any, and it seems that Jill's sort of resentful that Audra can walk, but she can't. Audra suggests that Jill's just going through this because she wants an acting award. And I mean, talk about mess a moment. Jill then asks if she doesn't have anything left, then she can paint with her teeth. And Jill gets angry because Audra is so blasé about all this and being disabled. And Audra then says that the worst thing a cripple can do is take themselves too seriously. Jill says at least Audra can use her arms, and Audra says that Jill should just feel lucky that she's still alive at all. However, Jill still talks about skiing and wanting to compete in the same cup that she had been in before the accident. It is then showing Jill a newspaper about her and how she will ski again, so it seems that everybody else is pressuring her to walk again, even though the medical reality of that is that it won't happen. In her voiceover, she talks about being moved to LA and being shown what she can and cannot do. A montage plays of her working out and physiotherapy, and a doctor comes in and she gives him a full diagnosis of what she has. He then asks her how she is, and she says that she's doing fine. Jill's then trying to help her hand move with a physio, and the doctor from before gives her a device so that she can use her hand to draw and paint. It works slowly as she moves the paint across the paper, and then Jill is seen trying to use her wheelchair, using her wrists to push a knob that was on the wheel so she can push it forward. She's being cheered on by the staff. At a building outside of the hospital, Buddy comes in and tells Jill that she looks beautiful. He sets down a present on the table and says that he missed her. She asks him for a kiss and he kisses her. He says he wrote to her every week, and she says that she wants to show him something, and he says that's why he came there, to sit across the other side of the room. She then puts her hand in a bowl of crisps and pulls one out. It's taking a lot of effort for her to do that, and she's very pleased with herself, but Buddy was expecting her to walk, and he looks really distressed. And the look on his face tells Jill that it's not good enough. He asks her if she's going to walk, and she says that she isn't ever going to walk, and the music swells dramatically as the camera pans out, and her voiceover says that she never heard from Buddy again, and it pans across pictures of them on magazines and cartoons as all the famous people. It then cuts to her in bed thinking about her accident and crying out in anguish. The Doctor and June are then talking about moving Jill somewhere else, but June says that Jill has said that she doesn't want any more help. And it cuts to Jill looking mournful in bed, and Dick comes in. He asks her what she wants, and he says that she needs a shot. She hasn't seen him yet though, but when she turns, she feels embarrassed, and he says that he's busting her out. He picks up a catheter bottle and asks her where it goes, and she says it's permanent, and he says, okay, that's coming with us then. He then picks her up, and she complains. He struggles a little, complaining that she's heavy, and he puts her in the chair. He pushes her outside as she laughs, and pushes her quickly across the pavement, putting her in the middle of the road, saying that he wants to ask her something. He says he's going to stick around until she shapes up, and despite the traffic around them, including a man who leans out of his car and argues with Dick, who then pops his bonnet and checks his engine before letting him go, Jill is laughing, and it seems that Dick has pulled her out of her self-loathing depression. Cut to a parade welcoming Jill home as Dick's airplane arrives, but it flies very low over them and makes the band all scatter as they think they're going to be hit. It's quite a funny joke. At home, they're having dinner, and Dick's talking about his antics in his plane, making things up. Bill then asks if he has any plans, and Dick says that he doesn't. Jill then asks Dick to cut up her steak for her, and he refuses. He tells the family that he can't give her any special treatment, and she smiles. Jill and Dick are in the pool in the next scene, and June looks disapproving as she thinks that Dick is pushing her too much. But he encourages her to put out her arms in the pool as Jill is being held up by a rubber ring. He then leaves her by herself as he dives at the water, and she complains that she's slipping. And indeed she does slip into the water. But he rescues her, pulling her to the side as she's gasping for air, and apologises, saying he wanted to see what she could do. And this is a problem I think I should highlight, because although it's presented as a dramatic moment, it also says something about Jill and Dick's relationship in the film. Disabled people do not want a carer when they're looking for a partner, so as with any other relationship, trust is important. Being put into such a dangerous situation by somebody's significant other can lead to trust issues and codependency, not to mention betrayal and a lack of agency. Jill may feel betrayed having put her life in the hands of her other half, only for him to put her in danger on a whim, and that would change their dynamic, and maybe even end their relationship. It could also make Jill feel as if she's the weaker one in the relationship, and she may find herself relying on Dick to do things for her more often, as she may feel that her life isn't as important as his if it can be endangered so easily. Over time, Jill may start to think that she will have to rely on her partner to get by, because they're the person closest to them and will do anything to ensure their safety. However, this may lead to Jill being afraid of her partner and not being able to feel safe around them, doing things to please them because they know that physically their partner has all the power. Although thankfully disabled people are still able to have loving and trusting relationships, even with a non-disabled partner. Outside, Dick talks about the house that they could have and how they could have it all adapted for her. She says she can't have any children and reiterates that she's paralysed from the neck down and that she doesn't know about making love. He says that that's not all it's cracked up to be, and she says that he'll get tired going off on his plane. He says he'll get a job, and she says that she doesn't want to really be the person to do that to him. But he says that somebody has to. She says that she feels useless, but Dick tells her that he loves her and wipes her nose on the bottom of his shirt and tells her that he will make that house that he talked about. They talk about a school bell that they can hear in the distance and that it's from a Native American reservation. And she says that she's never been to that area before. So as the singers are in the car, he tells her that they should go and see it. They see the poverty in the area, and Jill asks why nobody helps them and why they don't just move. And Dick says that other people are busy and that they have nowhere else to go. And I mean, there's a little bit more to Jill's story than this, but this just seems very much like a white privileged person talking about the plight of the Native American, and it feels a bit disingenuous. At home, they talk about the reservation, and Jill thinks that it's unfair that they live in such poverty. Dick then comes in, and he says that he's leaving, and Jill looks disappointed. Outside, she cries in his arms, but he says he won't be gone for long. He says that she'll be okay, and he puts her into her chair, and her family are waiting for her outside. He then tells her that he loves her, and he gets into his plane. And even Jill's brother gets teary-eyed as Dick leaves. At the hospital, Jill and Audra are in their wheelchairs and they're going down the corridor. Audra says that it's really fun there and that she'll have a great time. She then introduces Jill to the other people that are staying there. At the cafeteria, Audra says that Jill was famous, and they joke that she was on Mechanics Monthly because of her wheelchair. Audra says that she was a skier, but Jill is quiet though, and they suggest that she can't talk unless the press are around. They suggest that she still wants a sympathy. Another man says that you can find sympathy between shit and suicide in the dictionary, which is a really good line. I might have to remember that one. Outside, she's talking to a man, and he says that it's hard for someone in a wheelchair. She says that it's unfair, and he agrees, saying that people think that if you've lost feeling in your body, then you must have lost it in your head. He says that he has about a year to live, though, and he is studying as he wants to make every day count. He asks her what she's going to do, suggesting that she goes to school, and she says that high school grades were bad, and she wouldn't be accepted. He says that when a person loses feeling in their body, that their mind compensates like a person does when they go blind, and their hearing gets better. And I mean, that's not true. That's not a thing. But this is the way that he's going to persuade her. So, I guess. She says her mind is the weakest part of her body. And he says that she needs to exercise it and train it just like she would with any other part of her body. And he makes her agree to do it. This man's name is Lee, and he's played by Hampton Hancher. And they just don't make the names like that anymore. In the car, Jill and Audra are travelling with another friend, and she gets the chair out of the car. She helps them out of the car, but Jill slips, and they all start laughing as people stare at them. At the school, Lee says Jill doesn't need to copy down every single word that the lecturer is saying. She tells them to be quiet, though. And her voiceover says that she's felt drawn to the children that have been staying there, and that they have been drawn to her. And she's shown reading to the children, and the children are all in wheelchairs. Then she's sitting down at a typewriter, and Lee says that she has to think like a writer, talking about shorter sentences and longer ones. If she wants to type down everything she needs to do, she needs to do it all at once. She sends him with a little boy, and she tells him how to say the word bouquet, and he says that he wishes that she was his teacher. Outside, they're talking about meeting the dean, and our friend says that she'll say how much of an inspiration that she is. And sure enough, we cut to the van, and he repeats exactly what Jill's friend said. He says he can't help her with a teaching certificate because he doesn't know what she can do. She says she knows she can teach, and he says that no school will take her, and she says that's why she needs the certificate. He says it's because of her handicap, and she says that the only handicap is him. He says he's had to work very hard to get where he is, but she says that he doesn't know what it means to work hard, because she can't do the simplest things without having to really struggle to do it. She says that he doesn't even know what the word challenging means. He says that a wheelchair user as a teacher is unacceptable, and unless she can find a school that would take her, then he can't give her a teaching certificate. Her voiceover then talks about the Native American school, and that she thinks that they will take her. She goes out to meet a man, and he says that they will. And the voiceover says that she can finally rely on herself. At home, she calls Dick and asks him to come down for her birthday. Jill's brother then puts the phone in her hand, and the family leaves. She then tells Dick that she loves him and she wants to marry him, and he says that he'll hold her to that. On the ski slope, Dave is teaching some new students. Jill and Audra are sitting on a bench, and she asks Jill what she's thinking about, and Jill says that she's thinking about just how damn lucky she is. So it's come full circle. She's bookended with feeling good about herself again. At home, Jill's brother calls her teacher, saying that he'll be difficult to get used to calling her that. He says Dick will be there soon, and Bill calls to see where Dick could be, and that he took off 2 days ago. Jill's family reassures her that he'll be there soon, and he just ran to bad traffic. A phone then rings and Jill's brother answers it. He says Dick's okay and he hasn't left home yet, but Jill insists that she's taken outside, and her older brother does so. Bill then answers the phone and talks about what's happening, and it seems that Dick never left because his plane crashed and he died. The music then swells dramatically as Jill and her family cry, and it cuts back to the beginning of the film, and the boy asks again why she didn't get married. She says it's time for them to all go home, and her voiceover says that she tries not to let any of it get to her. And she says that she remembers what Dick said, that how lucky I am to have found somebody, and something that saying goodbye to is so damn awful. Then the song Richard Window by Olivia Newton-John plays, and it shows Jill with the children around her, and the text on the screen says that Jill Kinmont is now teaching elementary school in Southern California. Okay, so that was the film. And up next, I'm going to give you a general idea of what I think about the film and what I think it means for a non-disabled audience. The Other Side of the Mountain is a schmaltzy and sentimental biopic which is very much of its time. Being based on a real person's life, you never properly get the feeling that Jill Kinmont's life story is being taken seriously. Whether it be from Marilyn Hassett's over-the-top performance at the height of her turmoil, or through the insistence of her acting like a teenager, even though Hassett was nowhere near the age at the time of filming. I mean, you can make her wear pigtails and give her a perky personality, but you aren't really fooling anybody. In real life, Jill Kinmont herself didn't recognise the character on screen, but graciously said that she felt bad for whoever that was, and that's as far as it should be taken as an accurate depiction of her life. Once the key steps were gone, then all the facts were thrown out the window in favour of melodrama and the hopes of a tearful audience. Which did in fact work, as The Other Side of the Mountain got a sequel, which is a rarity for a biopic. However, the original glosses over the struggles of an everyday wheelchair user at the time to focus on a woman who managed to make her life a success. I'm sure many would have said that Jill Kinmont overcame her disability, but that would be another sentimentalisation in a film that doesn't really need one. And up next, instead of the trivia, because there wasn't much to talk about really, I thought I'd talk about Jill Kinmont's real life and what the film left out. Jill Kinmont was born on February 16, 1986 in Bishop, California. She learned to ski race at Mammoth Mountain in Sierra Nevada mountains, and in 1955 she was the reigning national champion in the slalom, also being a top prospect for a medal at the 1956 Winter Olympics. However, an accident was to change all that. After rehabilitation, Jill Kinmont went on to graduate from UCLA with a BA in German and earned a teaching credential from the University of Washington in Seattle. She started out teaching in Washington and then Beverly Hills, California, after finally moving back home and teaching special education. During this time, In June 1964, an article was published in Life magazine all about what Jill was up to since she had her accident. And Life magazine also published a follow-up article in September 1972. She then moved back to her hometown in 1975 and taught at Bishop Union Elementary School. She was also an accomplished painter who had many exhibitions of her artwork. She was inducted into the National Ski Hall of Fame in 1967 and received the Global Plate Award of the American Academy of Achievement in 1973. She also established and personally oversaw the American Indian Education Fund, which became law in 1997, and it was a scholarship program designed to fund higher education for local Native American youth. Her Disability Act advocacy also led to the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which became law in 1990. She died on February 9th, 2012, and there was no published cause of death, but her life acts as a testament to remind people that there is life after disability, and that stands as the Bishop School District even named an elementary school in her honour. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week I'll be talking about The Other Side of the Mountain, Part 2, about Jill Kinmont's life after she lost what she thought was the love of her life. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.